Hi everybody. Today we will talk about validation and refactor ES6 and ES7 for this project. So in the previous project we have here a library for Babel to transfer to JavaScript to any Chrome, Firefox, etc. And here we have Babel command line interface, and you can configure this for by open new file. I create a new file named Babel RC or Babel resource, a resource file for configuration preset. I use NV mean environment for compatible with ES6 and ES7. In this code line, we will replace this by replace this import and from. So import module name and function name from the package or from module. For here, I use export and I start the project, and then we check by press RS to refresh the project. So I modify this code using similarly with the previous code, and I use ES6. This is ES6, so I use import, and here we can use export, means that I export the model, so any file can use it outside this file or outside this module. And I import this to the model, and inside the model to do, we will have a task object, a to do object, and I replace the to do object with the import command line. And here we also replace similarly for here module export to export default to do. And okay, so press to index.js, and inside this file I import export from export module, and I change this to constant because this object does not change, and I export default router. And in the task I also import export from export module, and I import to do and task a model from to do and task.js, and I replace this to export default. Yes, so here I also have import do. I do similarly for all of the code line inside the project, so change it to ES6 on ES7. So here I replace this with import. Okay, import. So here I replace require by import. So we have a for router, we have for router for use to do index, etc. And I export this global object app, and I import this app to from here. So I export default router here. And what about to do? To do here, how can I validate the input parameter? So I have to validate the input. It must be integer, it must be string, it must be not null, so etc. So I install the validator package. The validator package contain various type of validation. So here this is the version of validator I use, the latest version at this time, and I import some validate function from the validator. So we have is numeric, check for the input is number or not, is empty, check for null, and is boolean, check if it is 0 or 1. Check it is integer, and convert it to date. Convert to date if the result is null, then the input parameter is not work. So I check that the name must not empty, the priority must 1, 0, and 2. so I use isInt, and I also have to check for toDate. I convert the string toDate. I using toDate function convert toDate, and if it is not null, it is okay, but it is null, it will be replaced or retype. So here I will respond to the client that name must be empty, priority must be from 0 to 2, and due date must be date. So you have to input or set the input parameter as this format, and the validation will check. For example, here if you add so you npm start to start a project, and you click to here, then you change the input parameter. For example, you change the input parameter, and then you change it to 0, priority to 0. Then we have here, so we have the result here, and this is the first validation. You can do similarly with any other validation. So we have here, you must check the ID, and the ID must be numeric, or it must be a number. Yes, and the ID must be a number, and must be not null. So you have to do similarly with some other API. For example, delete a to-do, you have to add a to-do an ID, so you have to add the ID to here. And if you change the ID to string, for example, like this, so we have the response to client that with the JSON here. So you can import is numeric, is empty, is boolean from validator. And here, this is a validate process to check for to-do ID, check name must not be empty, and the is finish must be true or false, or 1 and 0. Okay, like here. And we also have to check the ID. The ID must be not null, and the ID here. Okay, and the delete API, the delete API must be checked for ID. The ID must be not null. And here you do similarly with query by ID, and it is numeric. Check for numeric, and here it is to-do ID. You have to check for the to-do ID. The to-do ID must be a number. Okay, so it is quite simple to check for the input parameter using validator in this case. And here we have a user. The user entity has many to do. So one user has many to do, and one to do is from an one to do is from a user. So the relation here is one to many, one user to many to do. And I do similarly like to do one to do has many tasks, and we have the to do router here, but the list is not is unnecessary, because I only log in register. Register mean create new user, and login mean check for the user with existing email or name. So the register user here, I have to add post not yet, because the user must be secure, and the password must be secure from the client. So you should secure password before sending from the client to prevent other user can detect your password. So it is important. I will tell you in the client for in the example of client. Okay, so now open Postgre, we can see by some relation here. We have and create new table. We create a new table users. The user has ID, name, password, email address, and the profile URL and gender. Okay, so like here, so we have some field like here, and creating a new table name users, and you can show all the user here. We have a three entity or three table, and we select start from user. So no record. We create a new model, and in this new model you do the same as with to do and task. You import the SQLizer object from database file, and we import to do entity, and we create a new user. And so this user model, like the user entity in the database. So we have a type with name, password, email, profile URL, and gender, and the type here compatible with this. We have string, we have date, and integer, etc. And what about the relation? The relation here means that we have one user has many to do, or one to many. The one to many and one to do has from only one user. So we have a relation here. User has many to do, and to do belong to user with a foreign key. The foreign key here is a user ID. And I export the model here. So any file can import this. So in this router, I can import this. From here, I can import by using a try-catch block. And inside the try-catch block, I can insert a new object to the list in the database. So I use create function user.create and await. Await means that this code line finished, then the next line will be processed. So we have name, like name from the input. We have a password, email, and profile URL from the profile you type in the input parameter. So this is the field to display. We display all the field except ID, and you can also add ID to here. And after that, you check for the user. The new user has been created. You check for the new user. If the new user exists, we can respond to the client that insert a new user successfully. Else, you respond to the client that insert a new user failed. So this is a detail arrow. You can display the detail arrow to the user who who send the request and see the response. And here I also have some of the function for check the URL, check email, and you can get the input parameter from body object of the request. So by checking this field, you can also use check this field: name, password, email, profile, URL. And okay, we have a various input parameter here. Check. So this is the login API with the name. Here's password, email, and you can check by remove some of the parameter here and press send to see the output to see the output. But here, click to here, you can see that we have all of the function and insert a new object successfully. You can type your information and check. So check for user in the database. You select start from user to see. And what about the login? Login simply that you send the name and email to this, and the post request will respond to you about the object, and you can compare the object to the secure object from client, because all the object has been encoded. Yes, encoded, so anyone sees the password cannot understand and uses password to log in. Okay. So you can check about the email, the name, and ensure that the name must not be empty and the email must be in correct format. And so here you can try and catch to check for the login user and display the detail. So After file on, the user list with the parameter name and email. You can see the list of user object here. So after this code line, you can get the list of user object and check for the user object and then get the correct user. So here we have the user 0, and I display that login user successfully. Okay, so after that you can in the client I can get the user object and check for the secure password with the secure password by using the library bycrypt, etc. And so in Postman I send, okay, so we can see that login user successfully. So it is the login API for written in Node.js. Okay, so this is the end of my lesson today about how to write API for register, login user, and refactor code using ES6 and check for the input parameter with validator.